Perfect. All right.
There we go.
You continue. So you had a God spec moment.
All right. So I came on in 2012, and by 2013 had this moment in our food pantry where these 4 generations were shopping. And it was a moment of initially, oh my goodness, we're not doing enough, but almost immediately, no, you're doing too much. I had no idea why that thought came to my mind. I had no idea what that meant. And it took me a little bit of time to kind of look around and see what others were doing. Is there something we could be doing differently? If it is, what do we do? And like you guys, finding anything that I saw was being done urban. It was a city event, a city thing going on, and just not really. Could we bend it to fit a rural community? Would it work? I don't know. So we just started looking for people that were doing something different to start with. We didn't even know what we were looking for. And the book Toxic Charity, I had read that some time ago when it first came out, went back to that book and then followed it with Charity Detox, and then came across through one of my colleagues the book When Helping Hurts, the Helping Without Hurting books. So read that, and oh my goodness, I was just, and that by that point we were a little further into 13 and heading toward 14 when we read that book. And my board read it, and we all decided, we need to do something different. And so we started making that way. Well, this organization was founded in 1996. So at that point, we were looking at an 18-year-old organization who had done nothing but give one way. So turning the ship has been a challenging feat. Fortunately, our community is moving in this way. We've been helpful in making that happen, helping people to understand the concept of when helping hurts. When you get to this point where you're enabling and it's not, they're just going to be stuck if you just keep doing the same thing.
Yep.
So we found Kokomo Urban Outreach in Indiana was doing some work, and they are doing something totally different than they were at that time. Now they have this amazing program now, but they really focused and honed in on one of their works, and it was really good. But we also went to Bloomington, Illinois, and to Champaign, Illinois, to talk to a couple of people. And I should have written these down because it's been so many years since I worked with them. Matt.
Because the one in Bloomington, I think it's probably, we talked to someone up there a couple months ago, and probably the same ministry, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Matt, I'll have to pull his information out. But we actually drove over to Bloomington, and as we started talking to them, we decided, well, if we want to move this way, I was getting
Sweet Home Ministries, Matt Burgess.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah. So we actually talked to him back in December.
He's Bloomington, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he set me up with the Champaign. I want to say that's Bread for Life. One of them has Bread for Life attached to it. Anyway, we were talking with them and looking at what it would take to change the way we were doing things. And I made an announcement that we had broken ties with our local Feeding America food bank because they were really coming down hard on us about being a ministry. And I was just over it. I was just really over it. And I said to my board, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. We're not even able to use half the food because it's, it sits there. People don't want it. So let's just break that tie. We'll be fine. And we figured out how much of our food was coming from there, and we just broke that tie. So I was at this event, this fundraiser, and I made the announcement that we had broken the final government tie, no more government funding. And I was really nervous in front of about 300 people. What are they going to say? This is a small community. There's 47,000 people in my whole county. They stood and applauded. They stood. I was just like blown away by this. I don't remember saying this. My husband pointed it out to me, but he said, you stood up there and put your finger up and said, and now we can get down to doing what's right. don't remember that at all. But so we just started learning, and we decided after that concert that night, I had gotten so many phone calls. What are you doing? What are you doing? From counties around us. And I couldn't get my work done because I had all these calls coming in. So we decided to pull in both Bloomington, Champaign, and Kokomo and do a workshop. And we were going to be happy if we had 20 people there. We had 75 people from 5 counties and 3 states. And we were blown away. And that took place in December of 2016. So it was not a fast progression. And it's still in progress. We are not done by any means. We're still in progress here. But we just started to work with looking at taking apart all of what we were doing to see what pieces were enabling, what pieces were we going to be able to change. Maybe we couldn't change everything, but we could work on some things, and which one is the lowest hanging fruit that we can get started with, kind of thing. And then about 2 weeks after that conference, the economic development director, who had been involved in that conference, called me and said, this can't stay in the gates of Common Grace Ministries. We need this in our whole community. And okay, I don't really know what that means, but okay. And then a couple of days later, another person who is from our workforce development, he's a regional communications director for that, called me and said, hey, Angie, this is just weighing on my mind. This really just can't be a Common Grace thing. This has got to be for the whole community. And I said, okay, well, great. I still don't know what this means. You're the second one to call me, but I don't know. Let's sit down, figure it out. So we sat down and started working with asset-based community development. What does that look like if we expand that beyond the ministry realm even and out into the community at large? And I went and took my training with John McKnight. I went to Colorado. At the time, my daughter lived out there, so I went out and stayed with her and trained under John McKnight in asset-based community development. Fell in love with it and realized how much it had been a part of my career, even though I didn't know to call it that. My background is in occupational therapy, and I can tell the story now about my clinical instructor making me spend the day with my hands in my pockets because I was helping my patients too much, and that would hurt them. It would hold them back.
Uh-huh.
I learned helping without hurting, but didn't realize at the time what that had anything to do with. So it just has progressed from there. One of the things that we did in our furniture ministry, we worked with a furniture bank near us, a pretty sizable one, and had her come up. She has a really good model. It's called, so Susie looked at it with us and helped us with our policies. And she said, you want to move to helping without hurting, and you have a lot of cost for this. People don't realize you do because they donate the furniture and then we out, and it looks like what cost should be there. Well, there's a building, and so there's upkeep on that building, and utilities and pest control and all these things that go into it. We use something called SteriFab that we spray everything with, even though it's been inspected, and that stuff's $50 a gallon now. So she said, you want people to have some buy-in. What do you think your people can afford? And I said, well, I know they can afford a pack of cigarettes because they seem to all be able to do that. And she said, how much does a pack of cigarettes cost? Well, at the time it was about $5. She said, okay, so limit, because you say you have a revolving door of the same people, put a lifetime limit on it, charge them the $5 processing fee. And we had to do it that way because in Indiana, it's illegal to sell a used mattress. There are actually mattress laws. Who knew? And the week after we did that, and a delivery charge, because we were just running our van like crazy. And so we just did a flat rate delivery charge, $10 this side of the middle of the county, $20 that side of the middle of the county. And in our first year, we had a 61% decrease in van miles because suddenly everyone had a van, had a truck, had a whatever. when you have to pay a delivery fee. And then just like a week or two after we implemented that processing fee, this young mom came in and she had the truck backed up, and we were helping her load this couch onto the truck, and she had paid her $5, and she looked at her child and said, look, honey, mommy bought us a couch. And those words, I can see that picture in my head. I can hear her saying that she was so proud to have provided for her family. And it was $5.
Mhm.
And that's all it took. Now, does that come close to what our costs are? No, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It is about her being able to retain her dignity in having provided for her family. And, at the food center, we were going to head to a voucher process where they would earn vouchers to shop by doing community work or helping a neighbor or something, anything we could come up with to get them connected, even if it was a wellness visit to their doctor or, anything to build a network of people that would have these vouchers. When they did something that would better their lives, you could get this voucher, come shop at the food center. Well, then COVID hit and our demographic changed a little bit at the food center too. We had about 1,000 people a month coming to our food center, and they were coming from all over. And part of that was because of being a Feeding America thing. They don't let you rein in, and we couldn't afford to keep them. Really, we couldn't even afford to be with them because we couldn't feed that many people. We were always running in the red. I was always climbing the hill. And so we reined in our territory to just our zip code. We created a zip code map of Noble County, of our county. And in every zip code, we can tell them what food pantries they qualify for, when they are, how they can contact them, where they are, the dates, all their requirements, all that stuff. So we created this whole thing. So we weren't just sending them out the door. We were saying, if you're in this zip code, this is where you can go. You're outside of our area, but here's where you can go. And no, we don't even do a one-time visit because that we just had to draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
So we drew the line, and then we also stopped the first come, first serve. We had police cars involved. We had people lining up. We had all kinds of stuff going on. And I just said, we're done. We had a man walk up he was standing at the door, and our little lady that came to unlock the door came up to the door. He physically pushed her and said, you think you can get in the front of line because you're old? He physically, bodily pushed her. And I was done. And I just said, no more first come, first serve. So now
The raffle ticket system.
You bet.
And we saw that on your website because that's what we've been doing since COVID, just a drive-through pantry for the past 2.5 years, but we're reverting to an in-person. But kind of like you were saying, like we want to dismantle this whole thing because that's what we said. We don't just want to go back to what we were doing before. We want to structure in a way that is different. So that's where we've been figuring all that out. But that, like literally the day before I read the article about you guys and we were on your website, we had a meeting and we were talking about the very issue of like, okay, what do we do about people like showing up early, want to be first? Like, how do we do that? I made the comment like, I don't know if there's like a really great way. You're always going to be dealing with that probably, whether you're drive-through or in person, if you do it this way or this way, like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
And then literally the next day we're on your website, oh, that's how they did it.
And we stole it. We didn't come up with it. But the other thing that we did is we told them you are not to arrive more than 15 minutes prior to the start of the hours, the shopping hours. And we close it 15 minutes prior to the end.
Uh-huh.
Because we have volunteers that are giving their time, and we were having people show up right at the time we were to close and taking 40 minutes to shop. That's not okay. People need to understand that even if we're a ministry, if you go to the store and they make that little announcement that we're closing the store in 5 minutes, they are not keeping that store open for you for 45 more minutes. There's no reason that we need to be any different. And I even said to one person one time, he's like, your church, you have to help me. And I said, see that black thing on the floor right there? And he goes, what? I said, see the black thing on the floor? Yeah. What is that? I said, what is that? And he said, it's a rug. And I said, no, it's a doormat. That's a doormat. We are not a doormat. You're not going to tread on us like that. It's not okay. You need to treat us with respect, and you need to honor and be responsible for our hours, the time of our volunteers, and the time of our staff. So either that's going to have to be okay with you, or maybe this isn't the place for you if it's not okay with you, because that's our policy. So it's your choice. You know, I'm not saying you can't come here, but I am saying you can't behave that way. And it's on every application. We just will not tolerate that. After that happened with our poor little lady, she quit. She's done. She quit. I'm like, she was one of our best volunteers. And I don't blame her. I really don't blame her. We didn't keep her safe. And when we switched that, and we went to this other thing, and this one's a hard one if you're not already doing it, but I'll tell you why we do it. We require ID and proof of address for everyone in the home, and it has to match their proof of address, which has to be dated within 30 days. So that's really a part of another part of ministry that we do. When I was in occupational therapy, I worked in First Steps, and that's our early intervention here. And I learned very quickly that people move around a lot. They think they're running away from their bills, and they're really not, but they move around a lot. And when they move, if they don't update their ID to match their current address, and they go to re-up their Medicaid, they won't do it until the ID is updated. And I would know that because I would get to the house to see a kiddo and find out, you can't go, don't go. They don't have, their Medicaid's not up to date, don't go there. So the kids didn't get service. I didn't get paid. You know, it's just like this trickle down effect. But the main thing was those kids were not getting the services they needed. And so I would go to the home anyway and work with them on getting their ID updated. So I learned back then that this is an issue. And now everything we do it has an ID attached to it. I mean, you can't even get a library card without an ID. Jobs, housing, other services, WIC, you know, First Step, anything, you need that ID. And that's really not a bad thing. It's okay. And it cut down on fraud for us, which made it so that we could go from allowing people to have about 8 pounds of food per person on a visit. We're sitting somewhere around 35 pounds per person per visit. So when we reined everything in, it allowed us to have our resources go further for people that actually live in our service area. We didn't just say, you have to have your ID. Oh, you don't? So bad. See ya. We don't do that. If they don't, we say, okay, let's get you over to Common Grace. We will help you get that. And that means even helping them dig in if they don't have a birth certificate, if they don't have their social security card, understanding that you have to have the birth certificate before the social security card, helping people get through the ping pong game of you need your ID to get your social security card, but you need your social security card to get your ID. And digging down with them to something called secondary documents that they don't readily put out there, to help them gather the documents they need in order to get that ID and get it updated. We even help pay for it if it's a hardship, including birth certificates. And we're getting pretty good at going in the back doors of even other states to the county offices to get those birth certificates. So it's about making sure that people have the resources they need to be sustainable. And if we require an ID, we know who has it, we know who doesn't, and then we go after getting it. We even give them these zipper bags that are their waterproof zipper bag with a list inside of what local employers are requiring, what the township trustees are requiring, what the services, it's a whole list of documents that are required. Like our trustees now require bank statements for 3 months. So we tell them, get these in here, you know, keep it up to date. You know, when you get a bank statement, if they have a bank account, most of them don't, but you know, change those bank statements out, keep them current, and just teaching them what the important documents are and how to maintain them and when and where to take them. Just take them with you, you know, and we'll go down through that list with them and help them get whatever they don't have. So that's become a pretty significant part of what we're doing. And that also came out of some of the work that we've done with local law enforcement, especially reintegration when people are coming out of Department of Corrections and, you know, landing in our community, and they just aren't set up to thrive out here.
Uh-huh.
So just working with them to work on that.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I like kind of how you guys have phrased and, you know, approach the ID issue, because a lot of times it's just like, oh, it's just to cut back on fraud, but, you know, really phrasing it more on like, no, we want you to be successful and stable, and to do that, you've got to have ID and birth certificate and all these other things. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of like the first step, whether you're talking employment or everything else. So I
Yeah.
like
And
how,
for us, it was more of that than it was the fraud. We had to rein that in because we just couldn't afford it anymore.
mhm.
But it really is about making sure that people have what they need. I don't know, and I'll give you this. I've been telling people this. I've been talking to a lot of people lately. And I will tell you, as you move this direction, I don't know, my cat's joining me.
I saw something right there.
But it was the tail. I've just kind of been giving this little caveat to people. I don't know if you have any founders in your system that may not appreciate. Are you a founder?
Kind of.
Her
It's
dad
for
was.
you. There's something called founder's syndrome. And it is when a founder has in their head, this is the way it should be forever and all time. And if somebody new comes and they change things and the founder doesn't like it, they begin to cause issues. Or no, we don't do it that way. Please don't be that founder.
Yeah, I know. At least I hope not.
We have one of our founders is that person and has harassed me to the point of our board has said there he is not allowed to talk to me, to volunteers, to staff. He can only address the board in writing. He's been out for 10 years and he just did it again multiple times. Multiple times has he done this over the years. And I'm just telling people, you know, stand firm, get your board involved and let them deal with it. It has been pretty ugly and very hurtful and very stressful on the team. Very, very stressful on the team. So it's just kind of keep your eyes open for that when you start to change in that direction. It can, sometimes people don't like it. There may be people in your community that don't like it either, but if you can help them understand, I have talked until I'm blue in the face about what happens when we just let people languish in this. There's a great quote by Anne Lamott, and she said, I don't understand the mystery of this thing called grace. I only know it met me where I was and did not leave me where it found me. And that's, you know, for us, we don't want to leave people constantly struggling, constantly worrying and stressed about being under the gun financially. We don't want that. And, you know, as we cleaned up the way we were doing things at the food center, what happened, and it's in the history there, but we did have, and gosh, our mentors told us, that just be prepared and be ready, because you need to decide if you're okay serving 50 instead of 500, because your numbers are going to drop. There are going to be people who don't want any part of this. You have to be okay with that and understand and really make the hard decision that we want to help and not hurt anymore. And that means that when you break the cycle of poverty, when you break something, it hurts. It's different. And when you break something, it takes healing, and that's healing in a different way. So we don't want it to heal back the same way we've always been. We want it to heal stronger.
Yeah, so with your food ministry, so they come in, you do the raffle thing, which as a sign of like, so how was that received, or how has that worked, or how long have you been doing the tickets?
Since January of 2017.
Okay.
And, at first we had grumbling that I was here first and I had to wait. Yeah, well, it's not. I went in, anytime I make a change like that, when we make a change, I make sure I'm there as the director. And it's not because I don't think my staff can handle it. It's because I don't want to throw my staff to the wolves. And I want to be there to stand firm with them and to show them how standing firm looks, because I'm going to expect them to do that. So we made a game out of it, and we would shake the tin and then, we'd have and then they got into that. Our neighbors started doing that, but the nice part is we have a nice grouping of chairs, and we're back to that now. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad we're back to that. And they come in and they sit down and they're talking to each other and getting to know one another while they're going up to shop. And do we have sometimes people that are ticked because they were here first? It's usually people who haven't been there before and don't get it. And we tell them right away, if they're new and we're doing that application with them, we tell them we don't do things first come, first serve here. It is all on a lottery system. We're gonna draw your name out. So we don't normally have an issue with that. People are good with it. They know that we've done it that way. And it really cut down on the number of people who were throwing a fit, causing issues. And when that happened, a beautiful thing happened. Our seniors increased significantly, and they really have increased during COVID. And the reason for that is they could see all of the measures we were taking for safety. They were scared to go to the grocery store. There were people in the grocery store that didn't have a mask. There were people in the grocery store that weren't wearing their mask properly, or, we heard it all. But they could see, when I'm a medical professional and my team was not allowed to wear their mask down here. You wear your mask properly. It's tightly fitted. It's proper. And we would, we started by bringing them back in one at a time, constantly working with the health department. They knew we were working with the health department. They knew they could see us cleaning in between people. They could see all of that happening. And so they started to come more. They would come to us to shop instead of going to the grocery store. And now that with this inflation, they're hurting. Those seniors, our seniors are really struggling right now. And it's a generation that doesn't like to ask for help. So by getting to know them and them getting to know one another, sitting in those chairs with that, we really saw during COVID, when they had us close everything down and serve curbside only, we really saw the benefit come out of having them sit there together and build relationships.
Yep.
We changed our name from Friendship Food Pantry to Friendship Connection because we wanted that connecting piece a number of years ago. When we went into lockdown around here, we went into our staff's like, what are we going to do with our people? How are we going to do this? And I said, well, first of all, let's figure out who's most vulnerable. We don't want our seniors out, and we know our people that are medically frail. So let's call them and see how they're doing with food. So our teams, we have a Wednesday shopping day and a Friday shopping day, and there are volunteer teams that are pretty steady. And that's important when you do this, to build those relationships. It's important to have somebody they know when they come in. And we had them look at that. It was 409 people. The list was 409 people. And they sat down, each team sat down and went through that list and said, they've got family, they're good, they can, they should be all right. And every person that got flagged got a phone call. And calling through those people, we learned firsthand what was happening in those chairs that we didn't see, because we would call them and they would say, oh, honey, I'm okay. Have you talked to so-and-so? I don't think she has any family, and it was because they had gotten to know each other there. And by the time we were done, they had helped each other enough to the point where out of 409 people, we were delivering food to about 30 families. That was all. The rest of them, they were helping each other. They were, going to the store for one another. They were, it was, we knew they were building relationships. We didn't know the depth until COVID hit, and it showed us that depth.
Yeah.
And that came out of, part of it was the getting rid of first come, first serve. They have to sit there and talk with one another. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know that's like around here, been a lot of our conversations just among staff and with the folks that we're serving too is, although like the drive-through, yeah, it's convenient, yeah, it's efficient, you don't have the relationship in the community building, which we really think is essential to
Mhm.
addressing the deeper challenges that we face. And I was talking with one senior, that's what she's excited about us coming back in, and she was around when we were back inside before, which will still look very different, whatever we end up with. But that's one of the things she says, like, as a senior who I live by myself, like I'm plenty isolated at home, and I
Mhm.
look forward to being able to come in and listen to Christian music and talk to the other people that are there with me. And so,
Right. Well, and we also, they used to just come in and shop and leave. Like they would come in and they would go to the desk and check in, and then they would shop, and we weigh the food out. We weigh in food and weigh out food. So that's how we kind of track. It's one of our metrics. It's one of those metrics I do because grantors want me to do it.
yeah.
Do I really care how many pounds go out? Well, it's not the most important thing in my day, but I know a grantor wants to see that, so we do it. But we realized that with the way that we do it now, because the health department here allowed us to come back inside a little earlier if we would distance. So we had to keep everybody 6 feet away from food. We aren't that big. That's a little challenging. So we put this blue tape down on the floor, and so we would have, and they have to distance from the volunteers. So they would get checked in at curbside, and then they would come inside. So that was one person. They would check them through the desk, because that was a second person. And then we had people stationed around the room, and that person would take the cart. The neighbor would tell them what they wanted. They'd put it in the cart, and they would go around the room until they got done, and they would weigh out the food, log it out, and help them to their car. So we went from 2 people interacting, one at the desk and one at checkout, to 5 people interacting with that person by shopping alongside them. Our volunteers and our neighbors don't want that to change. Not that we can't shop for ourselves, but it's nice to be able to talk to, so they've gotten to know these people, and we're just going to keep that. We're just going to shop alongside them. They still are having free choice and all that stuff, but we're just shopping alongside them just because they're now encountering 5 people. And, maybe this personality clicks with them and that one doesn't. At least we have 5 different options for people to connect to when they're coming through the food center.
Yeah, so they come in, and I'm assuming there's still kind of a check-in process,
Mhm.
and then they get their ticket, raffles drawn, and they
Yeah.
go and shop. And so I know, so are there like systems of exchange, or so are you guys using like the voucher system, or?
We didn't. We have not at this point, because we ended up being predominantly seniors. And we were trying to figure out, I don't want to discount the fact that seniors have something to give back to the community. They do. And a few of them are now volunteers, and they're working because they found out that it was nice to get out of the house. Like you said, they can get out and socialize. But we have not instituted the vouchers at this point, and we're trying to decide what we want to do with that. Or if we want to do that, we'll use the vouchers in another way. And the car repair network, we're going to use vouchers. We'll be using those because that's how our network will know they've come from us and come through our process. But right now, the way that we do it, and we're slowly changing this. And if this came from Bloomington is on they go through and shop, and it'll tell them how many cans. Have you been there?
I haven't been there, but I know we talk with them because it's like pay $10 or $5 in an hour volunteering or something like that. And then that earns like a shopping trip. And then I forget how they actually did it at, like once you're inside. But
yeah. And so we've kind of been watching that model a little bit to see if that's a direction we want to go. But the first thing that we implemented from them is the amount of food they can get. It's supply and demand. So if I've got 5 skids of corn, you can have 6 cans versus, well, I only have a pallet, and I've got all these people to feed. So maybe we only let you have 2 cans. So we are starting to change more toward the supply and demand, and that's gone over very well. That's fine. But the way that it was originally figured out in our food center, if there's 1 or 2 people, you get 12 items or 12 points. Okay, 12 points. If there's 3 or 4 people, it's 16 points, 5 or more, it's 20 points. So I kept asking, where'd these points come from? Who decided these points? It used to be items, like you would get 12 items and that's it. And I'm like that, so we moved to the supply and demand and kind of added that layer in with these points. And we found out finally, after digging down, that they had gone to another food pantry and they watched people shop. And they decided, well, there's 3 people in that family and they got about this many items. So let's say it's that many items. It's incredibly ambiguous, because if I have 4 people in my family, it looks really, really different if it's me and my husband and 2 teenage sons versus me and my husband and a toddler and a baby. That's a really different shopping trip right there. So the whole item thing just still really bothers me, and I'm still working on, okay, how do we get away? How do we change that? So we've really added in on the layer of supply and demand to kind of combat that a little bit. But we're still working on that. I'm not happy with where we are yet on the food center. I'm still exploring and still looking, but I've learned slow change is lasting change. Like my team knows that's our motto. Slow change is lasting change. It's like when you diet, if you drop 30 pounds in a week, it's coming back. It's not staying off. So, we just change little things at a time, and then they add up and they don't, my mom used to call that the frog pot. Where you put the frog in the pot and you turn the heat up and they don't jump out, but if you turn it up too fast, they jump out. So it's just making little changes over time to get to where you want to be. And with each change, we evaluate, how did that go? Did it work? Did it not work? If it didn't work, what didn't? Will it? Is it a building block? Is it something it's a learning experience and we don't go there again? It's just a lot of that, and trial and error, and, and include your neighbors in that. Let them give you, they were thrilled to death when we went away from the first come, first serve, and all of a sudden they felt safe. They were happy with it. They started having a voice too. We started giving them as much of a voice as possible. What's here that you need that you're not seeing? Well, when you have mostly seniors coming and people who are vulnerable or medically frail, one of the things that's hard for them is specialty diets. Heart healthy, gluten-free, diabetic friendly. So we added those sections. We actually have those sections in our food center now. And we're meeting needs that way as well. So we're still a work in progress. I think we probably will be, because things change. And so you just have to learn to flex and change with it. But the first part's really hard. I'm not going to lie. There will be pushback, and, just explain to them why you're doing what you're doing. When we told them, look, it's either do something like this or we aren't going to be here at all. I can't afford it. Can't afford all these people coming. We're either going to make some changes or we are not going to be here for you at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the truth. That was the absolute truth. So
like, how often can they come in, or like, how do you determine then like what they do get?
Mm-hmm. So they can come twice a month, and we don't care. We are open on Wednesday and Friday. We have 8 shopping days a month. So if there's a 5th week, we close on that day. There's always 8 shopping days. Part of the reason we started closing on those 5th Wednesday or 5th Friday is because they would get in the habit of coming every other week. And then they'd show up and they'd already been there twice. But also that gives us a chance to have an extra day for our volunteers to take a break. And it also gives us a chance to do any resets or deep cleans, something different. It gives us those extra days. So they can come twice a month. And what they get is what we have. I mean, they come in and they use sticky notes. The team decided to make this change on their own when we came back inside, and I'm okay with it because it doesn't really matter. Instead of using the raffle tickets, they have sticky notes that we write their name and the number of points on it, so and then we hand that to them, and they can have that as they go around. And when they get over to where they're checking out, then the person has their name written down in front of them to log it. But they write their name on that little sticky note and they throw that into the tin and they just draw a name out. So it's the same thing. It's just they're drawing a name instead of a number, which is more personable anyway. So that's how we, as far as what they get, we try to work really hard to keep healthy foods. Our motto is help us help others eat healthy when we're out doing food drives and things like that. And we actually, when we do food drives, we started doing something that we didn't realize people would like this so much, but now it's requested. If a church calls and says, hey, we want to do a food drive, don't forget to send the list. We make quarter sheet shopping lists and they clip them on the side of the barrel. And then people grab that shopping list and throw in. They love it. They know they're getting just what we need.
Wow.
And industry does it too. Don't forget your industrial partners. They're very helpful. And when you do an industrial food drive, you'll get pallets. I mean, we get pallets of food from that. I don't, trying to think if there's any other stipulation about what they're getting. They just get free choice of things, and there will be, like right now we have a lot of green beans, I know, and so those are out there, and they can get, the vegetables are usually really easy to keep on hand. So normally they can get 6 cans for 1 point up to 12 points. So they can spend 2 points on that if they want to.
Mhm.
And those points are really more about managing stock now.
Yeah.
And they're getting a good, they get good choices. I mean, they've got a lot of choices there.
Yeah. So you guys are using a point system then?
We do use the point system still. For now. For now.
Yeah. So that's because before COVID, we just had kind of all the sections. There was just kind of like supply and demand, like you can have, based on your household size, you can get up to this much. We're planning on kind of going to a point system, just because it can also allow some of the budgeting piece. And we're looking at kind of like vouchers that folks could earn additional points, whether it's through doing a class or meeting with our case manager, developing budget, or kind of like you're saying, like some of those achievements. So we're looking at it almost like a little punch card that's like, hey, you did this accomplishment. Here's like a 5-point card, a 10-point card, whatever. And those would be ones that there's no like time restrictions, like, oh, you can only come twice a month, like kind of like your entitlement points, but it'd be where like, hey, if you earned it, then anytime we're open, come by and you can use it. So we're gonna experiment with that and see if it works. I've been telling staff, it's like, well, we're going to try this in September and it's going to be crazy and it's going to be chaotic. And there's probably going to be things that don't work and then we have to go back to the drawing board and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. It just, I always wonder if, let me know how that goes with the anytime card, because I can see, I swear, when I was a kid, like I had a sister that always knew how many cookies were in the cookie jar. So I'm wondering about the people sitting around that know they're there on their second time, and that person was there on the second time, and now they're doing this. Well, you have to do this to earn that. That's what's happening. And maybe that'll be a good incentive to people to do some things.
Yeah, so we'll see. And Yeah, we have not cut ties with our Feeding America food banks. That's what we've also been in conversation, like, what can we do that you'll be okay with? Like, how far can we push?
Yeah,
So,
you know, we had an issue with ours here. Um, they are an hour and a half away from us. It's Community Harvest, and they were coming. We worked with our local Kroger, which is 5 minutes from Common Grace. So I would go down every week and pick up the meat and bring it back. And within 10 minutes, I've picked it up and it's back in my freezer.
mhm.
All of a sudden I go to get it and they said, oh, well, Community Harvest is picking it up now. I'm like, what? And we had already broken ties with Community Harvest.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what just happened here? And come to find out, I mean, it was like I was a whistleblower and I don't ever want to be in that position again. The manager, it's a long story, but the manager at Kroger was on the Community Harvest board. There's a nonprofit here that processes meat, and they were taking meat that was supposed to come to the food pantries to Community Harvest. Community Harvest was charging us to get that meat and bring it to us, even though nonprofits had that paid for them by our community foundation. They were charging us again. They were getting like double dipping. And the person that did the grant for that meat processing didn't disclose that they owned the processing. So they were benefiting themselves. I mean, it was a mess. And the more we dug, it was awful. It was just awful. So I don't want anything to do. And then we figured out that it was all corporate deals. And so many of our people, I mean, the county next to us, there's a Walmart distribution center. And Feeding America struck a corporate deal. They lost 80% of their food supply to their food pantries. It was nuts. So I don't have very good thoughts about Feeding America anymore.
Well, that's like, I know here, because we've got basically 3 grocery stores. I got Walmart and Aldi, and then it's called Woods, which is more of a local chain for our county. And we do retail pickups from all 3 of them, but technically all 3 of those are under contract with Ozarks Food Harvest, which is our regional food bank. So that's what, like, okay, if we haven't even asked that question of like, okay, if we were ever to part ways, would we lose out on those retail pickups as well, since technically those are all under contract with? So
we did, but during COVID, they decided it was now it's fuel. You know, when they came to get that meat, what they said was, you don't have a refrigerated truck to transport that. Well, I was transporting it 5 minutes, 2 miles away. And I still took a cooler blanket and threw over it. Yeah. So you can't tell me that it's better to travel an hour and a half, sit in your freezer, and then you bring it an hour and a half back after we've paid for it. So our community foundation called them up here to talk to us. They wanted them to answer these questions. Why are you coming to our local area and taking the food out? They admitted, I mean, they even put their own statistics up, that of the food that came from Noble County, only 5% of it came back. The rest of it stayed in Allen County. And we just blew that. I'm like, I'm done. We blew that out of the water. We just, we publicized it, their own information. I'm like, this is nuts. And so we started a keep local resources, local campaign up here. And, you know, and we actually have more food in our food pantry now than we ever did when we had them. And because we announced to the community, hey, we are breaking ties with this. That was the last government funding. And when I announced we're breaking ties with this, the next thing we talked about was we're going to count on the community to help us keep our food pantry running smoothly. And oh my goodness, industry came out of the woodwork, churches came out of the woodwork, schools came out of the woodwork. And now we have individuals that run food drives just because, hey, it's my birthday, I want to do a food drive. Can I have a barrel? Okay. You want a list?
Another quick question that I didn't want to ask about your Common Grace side as well. And trying to wrap up here because I know you probably got things to do. We've got things to do as well. So like think about like your community and your setting. So are there other like food pantries in your area, or what does that kind of look like?
There are 7 major pantries in our county. And during COVID, we started meeting virtually every week. And I convene that group. I don't lead it necessarily. I just convene it. But we meet every month now still. We meet every month, and we've gotten very close with one another, and we will help each other. Like if somebody has, like just this morning, there was one in a neighboring county. Hey, I just got a big pallet of chicken tenders. Do you want some? Yep, we'll send a person over. You know, hey, we got a ton of eggs. And we have a text system that we communicate with one another when we know there's an abundance of something somewhere. Or it might be, hey, I've got a ton of corn. Does somebody want to swap some green beans for some corn? I mean, we do that kind of stuff all the time. So we're not under any single umbrella, but we work very closely together.
Uh-huh. Are those like in other towns, or any of them in the same town as you, or?
No, we pretty much cover different areas. We have some community meals that are in the same area that we serve. There are a couple of community meals. And sometimes if we get like big cans of stuff, like you get those big number 10 cans of something, then that's when we'll get that out to the community meals that are taking place. But most of it, we have the whole county covered in those food pantries. A few churches have a little pantry or something, but for the most part, we cover, you know, our territories cover together all of our county.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the other thing that like we've had to think through is we don't necessarily have that for our county. There's, you know, a couple churches that do have like a small pantry, but as far as like major food pantries, I mean, we're pretty much it for the whole county. And so just thinking through that of like, okay, any changes that we make, you know, there's not like a fallback necessarily, like, oh, well, you know, like we're narrowing it down to just this zip code. Like, well, if we did that, then there'd be a lot of zip codes that really would have to go to another county because there's not an equivalent food pantry. So that's the other piece like we've had to think through. So I was just curious.
Yeah. And we work on zip codes quite a bit. Some of the others, most of them, because they still have Feeding America, they have to allow people one time a month because of that commodity. But they're really feeling the pinch right now. And even we took a little bit of a hit from them initially. And I've told them, you know, if somebody comes from our food pantry or our service area, just send them back. You know, send them over to us. You know, and we'll also talk about, sometimes we have people that go from one to the other and maybe they're misbehaving. I mean, they're a little threatening or something. We let each other know that. We try to keep each other safe and say, hey, keep an eye out. We had a little issue with this person, you know, be safe. So I think just the communication piece is huge, just to build a relationship. And it wasn't easy because food pantries take a bad rap for 2 things. One, you're either too territorial or you're allowing pantry hopping. Now,
which is it?
One corrects the other. So, yeah.
Kind of last set of questions here. So for your Common Grace side, which is kind of like benevolence or whatever terminology you want to use. So what does that look like? So I know we were looking through some of the requirements. So it looks like you kind of require quite a bit before you even, you know, offer any kind of financial assistance, including kind of like a budgeting piece. So what does that kind of give me the quick summary of how that all works?
The program we use is Where Does Your Money Go? And if you look up Purdue Extension, and I can send you the link.
I think we found it actually.
Did you find it? Where does your money go?
Yep.
So we approached Purdue Extension and said, okay, we've tried to work with this workshop. People don't want to have us in their stuff. They don't want to do it. They won't come. We're not getting anywhere. Can we take the worksheet that's part of that and adapt it so that we can use it with every single visit? So that's what we did. So every time they come in, we're looking at income, 30 days of income and 30 days of expense. We're looking at who's in the household, who's working, who's not, why, what's happening, and we're getting their story. By getting this story, the other piece that's really, really important to this is that we are also a hub of resources for Noble County. So we have a resource coordinator and we have 2-inch binders that cover resources for just about anything you can imagine for us and for each one of our 5 border counties as well. So that if somebody comes over a line, we know where to refer them to. But we go through the application process with them. We give them that budget sheet to take it home and complete it at home where your bills are in front of you. Really look at that. And then they are required to bring that sheet back completed when we do a payout, if we are able to. So that time when they're at home doing that sheet, we are on the phone to utility companies, landlords, calling to verify, looking to see, are you willing to not evict for 30 days if we do a partial payment? You know, getting all that information about what's the story here and how can we be of the best help. Sometimes we have landlords that say, I'm not taking your money, I'm done. You know, so now we're working with the court systems and a local volunteer law program. We're going to be doing eviction mitigation clinics coming up starting here in September to help mitigate between landlords and tenants. But they bring that sheet back with them, and we remind them when they call back to see what we're able to do. We remind them, make sure you bring that sheet with you. And then when they come in, we go over that. And with the kind of a growth mindset. So what did you learn from this? What did you find out when you did this? Or what are you surprised about? What are some goals you might set around this? What's going to happen next? And gosh, you know, tobacco is probably one of the biggest money leaks. People don't add that up for the month. They only add it up by the pack. Mm-hmm. And when you put it together and they see what they're spending per month, sometimes it's pretty shocking to people. And, you know, then we'll refer them to our local hospital has a really great cessation program. And we can send our people to that. And some of them, sometimes they go and sometimes they just go, I'm done. I am not smoking again. And we've had people cold turkey be done. And then there are some that are like, no, I'm not going to change. I'm going to keep smoking. Well, if you're smoking $390 of cigarettes, this is true story, and you want me to pay your $60 water bill, chances are that's going to be a no. No.
Yeah. I know that's a major issue around here because I moved back up this way from Waco, Texas, and that's what I've told people is like, it's just like visibly noticeable, like the level of like smokers that I've seen like here in the Ozarks compared to, and part of it's because we have such a low tobacco tax in Missouri.
Yeah, we keep raising ours, so.
That probably would help put a dent in it at a certain point, but. Especially if you're doing like, hey, now it costs $400.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. No, that's to fill your gas tank. Yeah. I mean, it's good. I mean, most people they're happy to learn how to get a handle on spending and happy to have, you know, and sometimes here United Way has a program called Thrive United, and they can have a mentor or a coach for up to 2 years that will help them walk through that. And I don't know how far reaching that United Way program is, but I may say to someone, if we've worked with them and they're just not getting anywhere and they're not making headway, they just want us to keep paying a bill, I may say, you need to be actively involved with Thrive before you can return. Or you need to have a job that you've held for 30 days before you return.
Yeah.
You know, and we help them connect to that, you know. One of my favorite lines ever is, well, if I get a job, then I wouldn't need to be here.
Yep. You figured it out.
Good for you. Well done.
Yeah, and that's because we have a similar program. It's called Pathways, and you know, over the past year, we've made quite a few changes. Because like when I first came, it was just simple, like, oh, you can come once every 6 months, basically, and we'll ask a few questions. But we've really try to clamp down some things, but still, trying to figure out how do we, focus more on the development side of that. And so Travis, he's not here. He's doing actually his stuff.
Yeah.
So, but he may even, reach out to you at some point with some
Yeah.
follow-up questions too. But we did appreciate that. It's all on the website, which one I think makes it like all up front. So if someone's browsing around, like it's all right there. And then it's also helpful for us, like, oh, we can see a lot of these things. Like, hey, here's what they're doing. Here's what they require. Which I did see, like on the website, you even had like, like, hey, this is not a quick process. So just plan ahead.
Mhm.
And you require them to have an appointment, right? You can't
Yes.
just walk in.
We do, and that's a COVID thing too. Our office is very tiny. There's one way in and one way out, and it's a small office. So when we had walk-ins, people could hear other people's apps going on and their information. And coming in to distance, we have to have one at a time. And what we found was, gosh, when we make appointments, we're not feeling rushed because another person is sitting there. Nobody's hearing their personal business. Our relationships are stronger. They open up more to us when nobody else is in there but them. And it was just such an all-around good thing. And then, we've had some scary stuff happen in our little county. And we're one way in, one way out. So we decided, for the safety of our staff, and there's usually 2 in the office, but still, for the safety of our staff, and most importantly, for those relationship building moments, it's good to have appointments. Now, if somebody drives up and we don't have an appointment on the books, we take the walk-in.
Mhm.
But we make that clear, that we make appointments. So if you drive up without an appointment and we already have appointments scheduled, you may have to just make an appointment to come back, or wait if you want to wait, but usually they'll make an appointment to come back. But most people know now that we do appointments, and most of them appreciate that because they appreciate the privacy.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's most of my questions. Jordan, do you have anything?
Thank you for everything you said.
You're welcome.
You've just
I
been
have-
hanging out on the side.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you. You mentioned something pathways.
Pathways is the name of kind of similar Common Grace. Just
Okay.
ours is called Pathways. Yep.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like to learn what other people are doing too. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's one that we're trying to figure out. What are the best ways to handle requests for utilities or things. Which for us, like when it comes like rent or utilities, there's another organization in town called OCAC, and we actually refer to them first because they can't manage the state like electric utility assistance program. So like start there because there's like state money that's just
Right.
income based for like winter and summer when those bills are higher. So
Mhm.
go there first before we even talk about utilities. Then after you talk with them, if there's still issues, then you can come back and talk with us on that part. But then we also can help like with gas or fuel. But for fuel, usually what we do, we through our Pathways program, it's kind of more of an exchange. So like, okay, $50 of fuel, then we ask like you volunteer 5 hours basically. Because and one of the things Travis tells folks like, hey, if you're willing to ask for help, you should also be willing to help out your community too.
Mhm.
So that's how we do fuel vouchers typically, which usually the first time they ever come, he might make an exception, like if it's a really pressing need where they'll sign a contract and so we'll give kind of that voucher up front for the gas station, but then they commit to coming back. But if it's after that first time or so, then usually we'll require the hours up front. Just like we don't want you to like, because it was kind of similar thing. What you were saying, we had like some folks that were here like quite a few hours. Is like you realize this is only paying like $10 an hour, whereas minimum wage this next year in Missouri is going to be $12 an hour.
Yeah.
And you're up here like 15 to 20 hours, which is essentially a part-time job.
Mhm. Yeah.
You'd actually get a part-time job and get better pay than what you are here.
Yeah. What sorts of things do you have them do? Like, I would love to do that, but we don't have very much for them to do, honestly.
So
There's
we
not-
actually have lots of things to do because we also have a thrift store. And so there's
Okay,
always
there you
like
go.
sorting donations or, hanging clothes or helping stock shelves or just cleaning. Then with the food pantry, I mean, there's, stocking or bagging food or sorting eggs and things. So I mean, we also have a large building, which comes with its pros and cons.
Yeah, amen to that.
So, I mean, thankfully for us, there's always plenty of like volunteer opportunities. And so that's what it's usually figuring out, okay, what are your gifts? What are your interests? Or like, if you do have certain special skills, are there a way to utilize that around here? So like, if you are good
Yeah.
at construction or painting, well, we usually have painting projects that need to be done. It's just waiting for someone to do it. And so.
That made me think about, we have a local, it's called the Bargain Shop, that is from a local church, and we always take our stuff there because then they price it so people can afford it. And all of the money from that bargain shop, then they give to local nonprofits to forward the nonprofits.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I can partner with them, if we would do something like that, then maybe they could, I don't know what their requirements are. It would be worth a try. I don't know why I've never thought of that before until you said that.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
So that's how we handle fuel, and like occasionally we'll do it for other things as well, which utilities and stuff, if we do end up helping with that, it's more kind of through our pathways office and kind of looking at, okay, what else is going on in the situation? How can we hopefully create longer stability for them? But if it is someone that is kind of that frequent flyer, is like, well, yeah, we can, but we might run it through, we call it our VIP program, the voluntarily invested persons program, which normally is just fuel vouchers. But if we feel like it's appropriate for a different situation, we might make that a requirement for, say, utility assistance or something too, if based on the individual.
I like that, instead of frequent flyer, the VIP.
Yeah.
We have a few of those.
Like, we know you very well.
Yeah, we're on a first name basis with you and your family.
Yeah, there are those folks, like, as soon as you hear them, it's like, oh, yeah, I know them.
I know that name.
Not necessarily for good reasons, but yes.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Usually not.
Did you
Oh
have
my
any
goodness.
final questions, Christy?
No.
We're just soaking in your wisdom here.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a lot of trial and error. I can just say it's just.
Well, no, I think that's
I'm happy to
encouraging.
help others.
Or even just like you said, it's just been like a years-long process. So like, and especially when you're talking about that culture change, I mean, that's something that we have lots of conversations about. It's like, we know it takes time. We'd like to just snap our fingers and like, okay, everyone gets it. And so, and we're just kind of, starting that journey here in the past year or two of how do we, shift. So it's also in some ways encouraging, maybe discouraging too. Like, okay, you guys started this way back in 2007 or 16, whatever, and
it's only 5 years,
still
right?
figuring it out.
Yeah, that's right. You just go with the flow. It'll be fine. We'll get there. I don't know where there is. Who knows?
All right. Well, thanks, Angie. I've got to run to some other things, but definitely appreciate it. It's been really good talking with you. And
you too. Hey,
So-
send me a link to all of your organization and just kind of reach back. And I think I have it maybe on your email, but
yeah, and also, I mean, you can also just check out our website, which is bolivarcom.org. I've got a little packet that we give to churches, which kind of gives a summary of a lot of the stuff that we do, which it won't have the newest things with the food pantry because we're still planning and figuring that out. So, but
all
yeah,
right.
I'd love to
Well,
stay in
thank
touch.
you.
Do you mind if I pray with you real quick before you
That'd
finish
be
up?
wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Dear Father, we thank you so much. Just the opportunities that something like Zoom gives us to network and to learn from each other. And thank you for Angie and all of her volunteers and staff and those that are ministering there in Indiana. And just ask that you bless them, give them wisdom and guidance as they continue to work the trial and error to figure out how to best pursue your kingdom in their community. And also pray for us as well, that we'd be able to take what Angie has shared and learn from it and glean wisdom from what they've experienced as well. And all these things we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you very much. All right.
All right.
Blessings.